My name is Mike Rolband. Welcome to Ecobite. My name is Mike Rolband. I'm the director of Virginia's Department of Environmental Quality. I started my career working in the construction industry and the real estate development industry, and started my own company back in 1988. And I started a company that was focused originally on developing sites with environmental problems that a small developer would be scared of and a large one wouldn't jump on a small site. So I was trying to find a niche. That led to actually just becoming a pure consultant. And by 1991, my company evolved into just a consulting firm for natural and cultural resource issues. I also, at that same time, started developing my first wetland mitigation bank in Northern Virginia, and I was one of the first in the country. So for about 30 years, I ran my own company, eventually selling it to a large firm, and then working a few years full-time, and then kind of evolved into part-time. And then I taught college at Cornell University as a professor of practice for 3 years. And then I retired again. And then last year, Governor Youngkin was elected, and I read an interview that he was looking to try to help the economy and help the environment by encouraging economic development to occur to give people more jobs. And that means that we need to streamline the environmental permitting process, but make people comply with all these regulations to protect the environment at the same time. Because if you notice around the world and even in the US, areas that don't have strong economies can't afford to protect the environment. And in Virginia, we have a notable regulation and law called the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act. And in that preamble, Delegate Taylor Murphy, first, kind of described the interaction, the interconnection between a strong and healthy economy and a strong and healthy environment. So I wrote a letter and became the director of DEQ. One thing that we're trying to do is make DEQ more efficient. And I think that Ecobite is real interested in particular in some of the efforts we're doing. And one of our main initiatives we call PEEP, the Permit Enhancement and Evaluation Program. And our PEEP platform is now online for our first couple of programs. We have 12 overall permit programs at DEQ, encompassing around 60 different types of permits or approvals. And what I'm trying to do is develop a more efficient and effective permitting system. So I want people to be able to see transparently either the permittee, the agent, the applicants, the different people in the public that are surrounding the site or anywhere in the area. I want everyone to understand and see where the permit is in the permit process. So our PEEP platform, number one, provides just a simple Gantt chart type of schedule that shows all the major activities or actions that DEQ or all the different related federal and state agencies must undertake to come to a permit decision. And I think that's the key, that everyone always wants to know, when can we expect a decision, a yes or a no? And in my career, going back basically over 40 years now since grad school, it's a black box. You submit an application, unless you know the right people to call, it's very, very difficult to ever find out where you stand in the process. And it's a very unclear, opaque process, both in Virginia, but every state I've ever worked in at the federal level as well. So what we've done is, for every permit, we are in the process of establishing, number one, a checklist. What is required to be submitted in order for your application to be complete? And then a schedule that step by step shows the different tasks and different agencies you need to get through and the order in which they're going to go through to get to that final decision. That I think is a very powerful process. We are running it live right now online for the first two programs, basically our wetland permitting program and our mitigation banking program. I picked the first one because it's the most complicated in terms of it has the most number of federal and state agencies involved in the process. And we figured if we could make it work for that, we can make it work for the simple ones, but some of them only involve internal DEQ staff. The second program we picked because it's a joint program with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, mitigation banking. So the first step was establishing a schedule and aligning who is the lead, DEQ or the Corps, in this program. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, we signed a mitigation of agreement, an MOA, a memorandum of agreement that describes the mitigation process, all the steps, outlines who is responsible, which agency is the lead, and what are the associated timeframes. And we've also included timeframes for the applicant, just like in our permits, for them to respond to the different questions that we and different agencies may have. That program is also online and live. Any new permit submitted since March 15th. I'm sorry, March 1st. So you can now see where you stand in that program as well. Related to that, but behind the scenes, we have several internal processes. So we have what we call a My Permit page, which is for the permit writers. So they can see the workload that's been assigned to them, the different tasks that they've been assigned under each permit, and when they're due. And then we have an overall director's summary where myself and other managers can track the process and see statistically, either with averages or with an actual, statistical analysis package of every permit that we've issued and every permit by office, by agency, or in aggregate, and see all the different elements. So is it the applicants holding it up, and then we can drill down to this, all the different applicants, or is it a particular agency slowing it up or speeding it up? We're trying to evaluate performance, and that ties in another DEQ program called One DEQ, which is workload sharing, because we have 6 regions plus the central office. And now, for the first time, we have a dashboard that shows workload by person and by office and overall, so we can move workload around and become the most effective and efficient. I think the other part I should mention about the PEEP process is it automatically notifies a week in advance of a due date the permit writer on the due date itself, and then every week it goes to a higher level of management so that managers can get more involved and see if there's a problem, is there something they could do to jump in and make this process work faster, or when I say faster, really more effectively, because sometimes things just get stuck or forgotten, and now everything is being tracked, so we know that something has a problem. Let's go get more resources and address that problem. I think what we're seeing already is an amazing improvement in terms of the process. Different staff have come up with great ideas to make it a more effective process and eliminate steps or change the order of the steps so the system is more efficient. And then it's also giving a window to the public so they can see where they stand in this process and be held accountable as well. So one thing we found out, for example, is there's a fair number of people that submit incomplete applications. When I say people, typically consulting firms. Well, it tracks that process and it shows when it goes back to that consulting firm and how long they have it. And we give ourselves, for example, 15 days to respond to an application if it's complete in every program. Well, we're assigning 15 days to the agents as well for them to respond to our completeness review when it's not complete. And if it takes longer, it takes longer, and that changes the schedule. So we have a vertical bar that's the original target date, and if things slip beyond the original schedule that we're using as our base metric, the projected target date for a decision moves out as well, and that's a vertical line. So it's been very effective and motivating for everybody involved in the process to figure out the best way to do it the most efficiently, and also to submit complete applications. What we're finding, which I knew empirically, but now we're proving it's with data, is that the biggest delay is incomplete information. So a lot of people have this idea that they need to submit it quickly and just get something in the door, and then certain people will just wait a month or two and then submit a more complete application. Well, it wastes regulators' time. So what we're trying to do is get everyone upfront to know what's required, and then we can do an effective, complete review in a more efficient manner than start and stop and start and stop. So we're proving it, in 2 programs now, and we're going to continue. Hopefully, by the end of 2023, this year, we'll have all 12 programs and 60-something permits online. Where do I see this going in the next year to 5 years? Well, first of all, I'm almost 66. I retired a couple of times, so I don't plan to be here 5 years. But real seriously, I'm a political appointment. It's a 4-year term, and so I've got just a little under 3 years. What I'm hoping to see is by the end of this year, basically after my first 2 years, to have every single permit program at DEQ, land, air, and water, all in the PEEP program. The second step is I would like to at least, if not do it for every program, at least start into the process of developing a full electronic permitting system. It just seems what people think is electronic permitting is really a fancy way of distributing PDFs. And what we really need to do is something that, for example, I was a beta tester for the Corps back in 2005, I think it was, to develop a true e-permitting system where applications can be online and the data in the application goes into a database, and all the reviews and all the comments from the agencies, everything's collected and maintained electronically so that anybody can see it, number one, but also number two, just eliminate a lot of back and forth and a lot of emails nowadays. It used to be faxes and letters. That would be perfect, and that would feed right into a PEEP-like tracking system. So right now, we're taking the existing database that DEQ runs on Oracle platform, and adding a visualization system. We're using Tableau, that program, to visualize the data that was being collected in this database. Now, obviously, we've added a bunch more key stops or metrics within that database to track, so we can really see the process. But if we could link that to full electronic permitting, the efficiencies, I think, would be phenomenal. And then, of course, tie that into eventually to a compliance electronic inspection system to see the future compliance. I mean, we're not a big state, we're not a small state, but we still have roughly 25,000 outstanding permits at any one time, sometimes a little more. We issue between 3,500 and 4,000 permits a year of all different kinds. So the more efficiencies we can make, we could have less staff time spent on paperwork and more time spent on getting a good environmental outcome.
Continue this conversation with the Ecobite podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.